$190,000. That's what a $3 million household lost executing the exact Roth conversion strategy their advisor told them was the right answer, converting at 24%. Projected RMD rate at 73 was only 22%. 3 years of conversions, all on the wrong side of a 2-point spread, nobody bothered to calculate. Their advisor wasn't lying to them. He just wasn't running the one calculation that would have caught it. I'll show you that calculation in the next 10 minutes. Start with the last 18 months because that's where the mistakes compounded. For most of 2024 and into 2025, advisors across the industry were telling clients to convert aggressively before the TCJA bracket sunset. Convert now. Fill up the 24% bracket, lock in that rate before it becomes 28%. Then in July 2025, Congress passed the One Big Beautiful Bill and extended those brackets permanently. The rates didn't go up. The panic was the mistake. And for $3 million households who converted aggressively during those 18 months, the One Big Beautiful Bill extension exposed a problem the bracket panic was hiding. Some of the conversions were locked in at rates higher than the rates the IRS would have applied at RMD age. The panic skipped the calculation. The extension revealed which conversions were wrong. 1/3 of the conversion plans my team has reviewed in the last 2 years were converting at the rates higher than the projected RMD rate. The bracket panic accelerated that misalignment specifically because the urgency to convert before sunset overrode the calculation that would have caught the rate mismatch. This video is for retirees doing Roth conversions every year for the last 3 years, specifically those who never compared their conversion rate to their projected RMD rate. Here's the part most $3 million retirees feel but can't quite name. You've heard Roth conversions are the answer, and so many times it became a reflex. Your advisor mentioned it, the podcast you listened to confirmed it, the YouTube video you watched last week said the same thing. So you started converting. And now, 3 years in, you have no idea whether the rate you're converting at actually beats the rate the IRS would have applied at 73 or 75 when your RMDs start. If you've ever felt like the conversion strategy you're executing was sold to you as the universal truth without anyone showing you the math on your specific situation, that's not your imagination. The conversion advice was built for the average $3 million household. You're not the average household. Nobody is. The strategy is correct in aggregate. It's not always correct in particular. I'm Ryan Knoll, founder of Nav Wealth Partners. We specialize in helping retirees with $2 to $5 million pay fewer taxes in retirement. In the last 2 years, my team has reviewed dozens of Roth conversion plans built by other advisors. 1/3 were converting at rates higher than the rate the IRS would have applied at RMD age. The average cost of those misaligned conversions, $90,000 to $140,000 in lifetime federal taxes, several over $200,000. I'm going to show you what this mistake looks like and cover a 3-filter framework that tells you whether your specific conversion plan is helping or hurting, the single calculation that almost nobody runs, and the playbook that determines the right conversion amount. Most $3 million households are making at least one of 3 specific Roth conversion mistakes, whether it's the wrong rate, forgetting about IRMAA, or forgetting about their charitable intentions. Each one has a dollar consequence, and altogether, they add up to about $190,000 for a typical $3 million household. Let me walk you through each one. Every Roth conversion is a bet. The bet is that today's tax rate is lower than your future RMD-driven rate. If today's rate is lower, the conversion will win. You paid tax once, at a lower rate, and the dollars then grow tax-free forever. If today's rate is higher, the conversion loses. You paid more tax than you would have paid by leaving the money in the traditional account. The bet has a number. That number is rarely calculated. For a $1 million 401k household after RMDs, they are still able to operate within the 12% marginal bracket in most cases. So converting at 22% is a losing strategy. For a $2 million household, the projected marginal rate after RMDs is usually hovering in the 22% bracket. And the determining factors here are IRMAA, survivorship, and charitable intent. For a $3 million household, the marginal rate at RMD age is typically the upper part of the 22% bracket, maybe 24% depending on their other income sources. And here's the part that nobody talks about. For $3 million households who have been converting aggressively for the last 3 years, the projected rate at 73 may already be lower than the rate they're currently converting at. Every additional dollar converted at 24% when the future forced rate would have been 22% costs the household money in real terms. That's the structural insight. Aggressive conversion compounds against itself. The more you convert, the lower your projected RMD rate goes. At some point, usually a point that has already happened for households 3 years into the corridor, the additional conversions start costing more than they save. Now, here are the 3 specific mistakes that show up most often. Mistake number 1 is converting at the wrong rate. Filling the 24% bracket today when the projected RMD rate at 73 is 22%, for every $100,000 converted at this misalignment, the immediate cost is approximately $2,000 in excess federal tax, compared to letting that money come out as an RMD later. But the lifetime impact compounds. That $2,000 came out of the converted balance, which now grows tax-free at a smaller starting amount. Over 15 years, a $100,000 misaligned conversion costs approximately $6,300 in lifetime impact, assuming your accounts are growing at around 8%. For a $3 million household, executing $1.25 million in lifetime conversions at the wrong rate, well, that's a little over $79,000 in missed opportunity. Mistake number 2 is forgetting about IRMAA. The higher marginal tax bracket you target comes with another silent killer retirees converting to Roth forget about: IRMAA surcharges. For couples performing Roth conversions in the 24% bracket, it is not uncommon to target $275,000 or more when it comes to modified adjusted gross income. At that level, they are in the 3rd tier of IRMAA surcharge. For Part B coverage, that's an extra $203 a month. And for Part D, that's an extra $37 a month, and that's for each person. So a married couple pays $480 more per month than the base rate. If they perform 12 years of these conversions that coincide with Medicare starting at 65, that is an extra $70,000 lost to Medicare penalties. And now the final mistake is forgetting about charity. Many retirees we work with are charitable. In the $2 to $5 million asset range, this is really not that uncommon. Some advisors recommend converting as much as possible to Roth. The math doesn't support that for charitable households. Every dollar you convert is a dollar you can't qualified charitably distribute later. For a household giving $15,000 a year to charity over 15 years, that's $54,000 in conversion tax the QCDs would have made zero. For a retiree who has $3 million in a 401k or IRA, the goal should not be to convert all of it. It should be to convert just enough to avoid the first 2 mistakes, which are higher rates and IRMAA. So here's how the retiree giving $15,000 a year loses out on more than $50,000 in taxes. Assuming their conversions push them into the 24% bracket, that is $3,600 of taxes paid for no reason each year. Had they not converted those funds, that QCD could be given tax-free. Compound that over 15 years, and we get $54,000 worth of mistakes. The total cost of all 3 mistakes together is $190,000. I want to show you what this looks like for a real person. I met a potential client earlier this year, 64 years old, married, both spouses retired. $3 million saved, $2.1 million in a traditional IRA, $500,000 in a taxable brokerage, and $400,000 in a Roth from previous conversions. The combined household income from his pension and their Social Security was about $125,000 a year. They give $15,000 a year to their church and have for the last decade. He'd retired 3 years earlier, and for those 3 years, his advisor had told him to execute $150,000 in Roth conversions every single year. This ended up tipping them into the 24% bracket when it's added on top of the pension and Social Security. The reasoning was the standard 2024 playbook. Convert aggressively now before the Tax Cut and Job Act sunsets. Lock in the lower rates and fill the corridor before it closes. 3 years, $450,000 converted, all at 24%. The plan was to keep going for another 5 years until the IRA was either converted or spent down. When he came to me, he didn't have a specific complaint. He thought he was doing the right thing. He'd been told this was the strategy. He'd executed it consistently. He was here because his accountant mentioned in passing that his tax bill seemed a bit high, and he just wanted to get a second opinion. When we ran the numbers, 3 problems showed up at once. Problem 1, he was converting at 24% when his projected RMD rate was only 22%. We modeled his projected marginal rate at RMD age, accounting for the conversions he'd already done, his Social Security, his taxable account income. The answer came back. The top of his RMD-driven income would land him in the 22% bracket, 2 percentage points lower than the rate he'd been converting at, for 3 years every single year. Over an 8-year conversion plan totaling $1.25 million, that 2-point misalignment is roughly $25,000 in immediate excess federal tax. Compound the foregone growth on those dollars at 8% over 15 years, and the lifetime cost here is approximately $79,000. Problem 2, the conversions were triggering Tier 3 IRMAA. By stacking $150,000 of conversion income on top of his pension and Social Security, his modified adjusted gross income was landing above $274,000, which is squarely in the third IRMAA tier for a married couple. That's about $240 per month per spouse in additional Medicare surcharges above the base premium. $480 a month for the household, roughly $5,800 a year. He'd already been on IRMAA watch for Medicare for one of those 3 conversion years and was about to enter year 2. Over the planned 8-year conversion stretch starting at 65, the cumulative IRMAA surcharges he was on track to pay was approximately $58,000. He hadn't been told about this. The bracket fill software didn't flag it. The advisor hadn't run it. Now the third problem was the $15,000 a year church giving was being taxed before it ever reached the church. Once he turned 70 and a half, he could have given the $15,000 directly from his IRA via qualified charitable distribution, completely tax-free. No conversion required. But under the advisor's plan, by 70 and a half, most of the IRA would already be converted. Every dollar of pre-conversion he didn't need was a dollar he couldn't QCD later. $15,000 a year at his 24% conversion bracket is $3,600 in tax paid for no reason. Over a 15-year giving horizon from age 70 and a half to 85 or 86, that's roughly $54,000 in conversion tax the QCDs would have eliminated entirely. The 3 problems were $79,000 from converting at the wrong rate, $58,000 from IRMAA, and $54,000 from misqualified charitable distributions. Total long-term cost is approximately $190,000. From the strategy his advisor told him was the right answer. When I showed him the comparison, converting at 24% versus the projected RMD rate at 22%, IRMAA stacking, and qualified charitable distributions that he could no longer take, he looked at me and said, "We prepared for the sunset, but we never compared the 2 numbers." That's the moment I want every person watching to understand. The mistake wasn't malicious. The advisor wasn't trying to mislead anyone. He was running the bracket fill calculation the software gave him and applying the TCJA urgency the industry was selling. The 3 calculations that would have caught these mistakes, a rate comparison, an IRMAA tier check, and QCD opportunity cost, weren't in the playbook. Then in July 2025, the One Big Beautiful Bill passed. The brackets that were supposed to sunset didn't. The 24% rate he'd been converting at, locked in 3 years deep, was permanent, and so was the 22% rate that the IRS would have applied at 73. Luckily, he caught it at 64 before he kept converting at the same pace for the next 5 years. We restructured the strategy. We capped his annual conversions at the top of the 22% bracket. We dropped his modified adjusted gross income below the Tier 3 IRMAA threshold, and we preserved enough of his traditional balance to fund 15 years of QCDs starting at 70 and a half. His new annual tax bill is roughly $9,000 lower than the advisor's plan. More importantly, the $190,000 long-term mistake didn't lock in. The retirees I worry about are the ones who never run the 3 calculations and keep converting at 24% for 5 more years. If this case study sounds like the plan you've been following, my team would love to talk with you. In 30 minutes, we can tell you whether your current conversion strategy is on track or whether one of 3 mistakes is in play. If it is, we'll lay out what running the full analysis looks like. Households at this dollar level are typically saving $5,000 to $10,000 a year in immediate taxes once the 3 calculations get run, and avoiding the $190,000 long-term mistake before it locks in. The link is in the description. We prioritize calls for households in the $2 to $5 million range and typically have availability within a week. Now let me walk you through the 3 calculations themselves. If after the next 2 minutes you want to run them on your specific numbers, the link is in the description. Here are the 3 filters that tell you whether your specific conversion plan is helping or hurting. Filter 1, you want to calculate your projected RMD tax rate at 73 or 75, depending on when yours start. Take your current 401k and IRA balance combined. Multiply them by 1 plus whatever the rate of return you think you will earn to the power of the number of years until you reach RMD age. That's what your projected balance at the RMD start age is. Divide that by 26.5, and that's your first RMD amount. So someone with $3 million who's 68 years old and earns 8% a year will multiply $3 million by 1.08 to the 5th and expect an IRA balance to be roughly $4.4 million by the time their RMDs start. Divide that by 26.5 and get a first-year RMD of around $166,000. Now stack the income picture at 73. Add your projected Social Security, which is 85% taxable, add expected investment income from any remaining taxable account, and then add any pension or annuity income. Subtract out your deductions and apply the brackets to that taxable income number. This is your owed taxes. You want to then see how that changes over time as RMDs grow if you do nothing. Doing nothing is your baseline tax outcome. For this example, let's assume Social Security adds $40,000 of taxable income. The portfolio adds $20,000 in interest income, and there's a small $18,000 pension. Total adjusted gross income with the first RMD is $244,000. After their standard deduction of $35,500 because they're over the age of 65, they are taxed on $208,500. This puts them in the 22% bracket. In fact, they have a little less than $3,000 worth of room before they max out the 22% bracket. They likely want to do that, but no more. Dipping into 24% at this point is not a good strategy. This is, however, why we recalculate annually, because next year, this might not make sense. So now we want to move on to the second filter, which is you don't want to forget about your modified adjusted gross income, because that's what determines your IRMAA surcharge. This is the comparison you can't forget. Modified adjusted gross income is based on your adjusted gross income, which is just all of your income added up with no deductions, plus non-taxable interest income. In our example of the 68-year-old couple, their AGI was the $244,000. If these clients had any municipal bond interest, that would need to be added in. That puts this couple in the second IRMAA bracket. Let's assume their portfolio had a large municipal bond position, and this is common in retirement because earnings here are tax-free. But unfortunately, most retirees don't count them for their modified adjusted gross income ahead of time. So assume the municipal bond position adds another $35,000 to their modified adjusted gross income, and now they trip the next Medicare bracket. This is why it's so important to understand where all of your income is coming from, because the mistake is thousands of dollars annually. Finally, you don't want to forget about charity. If you give to charity in retirement, every dollar of pre-conversion is a dollar you can't QCD later on. Calculate your expected charitable giving from age 70.5 onward, multiply by your conversion year marginal rate. That's the conversion tax you'd pay on dollars that could have gone to charity tax-free. For most $2 to $5 million households giving $10,000 to $20,000 a year, the misqualified charitable distribution opportunity is $30,000 to $60,000 over a 15-year giving window. If your charitable giving plan funds itself from your IRA via QCD starting at 70.5, you need to preserve enough traditional balance to fund that giving. Don't convert dollars that have a tax-free exit waiting for them. Now there's a note on cadence here. The math is a moving target. Conversions executed last year changed this year's projection. Market growth changes the projected balance, and the tax code adjusts for inflation. Run all three filters every single year. It should take no more than 20 minutes, and it prevents the slow drift that produces 3 years of misaligned conversions. Run these three filters this week, and you'll know three things you didn't know this morning. Whether your conversion rate today is above or below your projected marginal rate at RMD age, whether your planned modified adjusted gross income triggers an IRMAA tier that eats into the conversion benefit, and whether your charitable giving plan is better served by preserving traditional balance for QCDs than by converting now. Roth conversions are the right strategy for most $3 million households, but they're not universally correct. The strategy you've been executing was sold to you on the same way it's sold to every other client of every other advisor. Convert aggressively, fill the bracket, and use the corridor before it closes. That is the playbook. It was delivered to you as a universal truth, but the truth is more specific. The conversion's a bet. The bet is three numbers: your projected marginal rate at RMD age, your projected modified adjusted gross income against the IRMAA tiers, and the value of the QCDs you're foreclosing on. Almost no advisor calculates all three, and for 18 months, the bracket panic of 2024 and 2025 made it worse, pushing households to convert aggressively without checking any of those numbers. You're wealthy enough that a single misaligned $100,000 conversion costs about $6,300 in lifetime impact. That's small in isolation, but that same household, converting that way for several years while stacking IRMAA and foreclosing future QCDs, reaches $190,000 before they catch it. That's the case study I just walked you through. And it's the same shape we see across a third of the plans we review. The One Big Beautiful Bill extension exposed which 2024-2025 conversions were wrong. The conversions that got locked in at 24% when the projected RMD rate was 22% can't be undone. What can change is the going forward strategy. And the calculations that would have prevented the misalignment in the first place are the same calculations that can stop further damage right now. The three filters take 20 minutes. Run them this week. Filter 1 reveals your current conversion rate and whether it's higher than your projected marginal rate at RMD age. You want to pause or reduce conversions immediately if that's the case. The going forward dollars cost more than they save. Filter 2 reveals your planned modified adjusted gross income and whether it's pushing you into a higher IRMAA tier. recalibrate the conversion amount to stay below the threshold. The Medicare surcharges erase the conversion benefit. If filter 3 reveals you have charitable intent that QCDs would serve better, preserve enough traditional balance to fund that giving from 70.5 onward. Every dollar you convert is a dollar that you can't QCD later on. If you skip the link earlier, the calendar in the description is still there. If your numbers reveal a misalignment, we'll show you what changing the strategy looks like. If they don't, you'll leave the call with confidence that your current plan is working. And if you know someone with $2 to $5 million who has been converting on autopilot without anyone checking these 3 calculations, send them this video. The math takes 20 minutes. The cost of not running it can reach $190,000 for a typical $3 million household and more for larger ones. Because the smartest thing you can do with $3 million is make sure every conversion actually counts. I'll see you next week.